From CBS News Space Headquarters in color, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Harry Reasoner in New York, and Roger Mudd in Washington, Dan Rather in Washington, Robert Pierpoint in Washington, Adam Rayfield in Algiers, and Robert Shackney in occupied Honduras.
Good evening. Well, this afternoon, another long television transmission highlighted by the first in-flight glimpse into the lunar landing module. And here's how it went, starting with a view of the hatch between the two spacecraft shortly before lunar landing module pilot Buzz Aldrin opened it.
Well, in Houston, we're really amazed at the quality of the picture up in the tunnel. It's really superb, over. It is considering the amount of light up in there. We're about to open the hatch now. Right. That same guy that when you open up the doorway, he's waiting there for you and he turns the lights on. How about that? It's like the refrigerator.
That light is automatic like a refrigerator light. When the door opens, it turns on.
Conversation between Charlie Duke and Mike Collins referring to the automatic light that comes on in the LEM when the hatch is opened.
It's the voice of Doug Ward, the voice of Mission Control.
Hey, that's a great shot right there. We see you in there. Yes, that's Neil and Mike.
That's looking back up from
anyway.
Looking back up from the lunar module up into the command module. A wonderful shot. At this point, they were 203,000 miles from the Earth, 43,000 miles from the Moon, traveling 3,165 miles an hour.
Buzz Aldrin has apparently carried the camera into the LEM with him, showing as Neil Armstrong and Mike Collins back in the CSM.
CSM Command Service Module.
That's really a beautiful shot.
I'll open up the windows and see what the lighting conditions are going to be like.
The windows in the LEM, those two triangles through which the lunar module pilot, Buzz Aldrin, on the right, and when he is in the LEM, Neil Armstrong, the flight commander, on the left, look through. It is down.
Houston, that's a real good view. We have the AOT. You're back now, Buzz, and notice you're taking down one of the window shades, over.
It is down through those.
I'm not quite sure who's holding the camera at this point. Apparently it's drifting freely inside the cabin.
It's such a steady picture for drifting freely, it seems.
More likely attached to some convenient point within the LEM cabin.
Yes, that seems more likely.
Charlie, I'll give you a view out of the overhead window back looking at the command module right-hand rendezvous window.
Roger.
There you see the silvery form of the command module, in which a moment ago you saw Mike Collins and Neil Armstrong up through the docking hatch.
Thanks a lot, Buzz. That's a good view through the overhead.
We're giving you a picture now of the floor of the cabin. I think you can see the one of the two portable life support systems backpacks here in the center, and on each side we have the two helmet visors. I'll remove one of them and show you a little closer view of what this looks like.
Roger.
This is Buzz Aldrin, of course, who is doing the demonstrating for us.
The visors are the EVA gloves with the blue tips. I'll not take those out now.
EVA gloves, extravehicular activity gloves. Gloves that can stand the...
Right, but that's a great shot now that we're getting of the helmet, the EVA visor, and also the EVA gloves in the background.
The gloves can stand that 250-degree heat on the moon in case they...
Okay, you did say this was going out now, didn't you?
Stand by, I think so.
These visors are to protect against the glare of the sun, which of course is not interrupted in any way by an atmosphere on the moon, so it is powerful.
You got a pretty big audience. It's live in the U.S., it's going live to Japan, Western Europe, and much of South America. Everybody reports very good color. Appreciate the great show.
And it protects against the impact of micrometeoroids, which also, unimpeded by atmosphere, strike the moon's surface and will strike the astronauts. These little tiny pin specks of meteor material at as much as 1,000 feet per second. High impact velocity, like bullets from a gun. Greater than that, of course, by far, but with great impact. They're not expected to do any harm. The men are well protected against them in their suits and their helmets and these visors you see. The gloves.
Your EVA visor assembly. Appreciate it.
The gloves have to be able to protect them if they pick up the surface material, which will be heated to 250 degrees in the sun, in the moon's daylight.
11, Houston, if that's not the Earth, we're in trouble. That's the Earth, and we have a very good view of it today. There are a few more cloud bands on than yesterday when we beamed down to you, but it's a beautiful sight.
Well, beautiful pictures from the lunar module in space as it's attached to the nose of the command module on the way to the moon, which they reach tomorrow and go into lunar orbit tomorrow afternoon. The day also produced news of the first in-space cooperation between the United States and Russia. It was disclosed that Frank Borman, the Apollo 8 astronaut who recently visited the Soviet Union, telephoned a top Russian scientist yesterday to ask about the orbit of the moon-circling unmanned Luna 15. And Borman was advised that Luna 15's orbit poses no threat to Apollo, but the Russians did not say what was the exact purpose of the Luna mission, and we're still in the dark about that. Walter Cronkite, CBS News, Space Headquarters, New York.
Kodak announces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 brand new Kodak Instamatic movie cameras. Each of these new Kodak Instamatic movie cameras has a flip-out pistol grip for easier, smoother handling. Each one has drop-in loading. Easy. Each one is trim and slim. And there's a choice of features like manual or power zoom, electric eye, and reflex viewing. 5 brand new ways to put your good times in movies. 5 brand new Kodak Instamatic movie cameras, starting at less than $30. See your Kodak dealer.
The Nixon administration today proposed making birth control information and devices available to poor women, a program that eventually would cost $150 million a year. Dan Rather reports.
American women of middle income or above already have ample access to birth control information. The problem in this country is among women in or near the poverty level. The major new thrust in the population message is built around this theme. The president asks a national commitment to make birth control information and prenatal care available to every woman in the United States by 1976. The need was emphasized by Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare, Robert Finch.
Consequences of these unwanted births are most obvious in our poor families, and that we maintain this vicious cycle of poverty and fertility. Because these people are poor, they don't know how to plan their families, they don't know where to turn to help. Because they do not limit the size of their families, the expense of raising unwanted children on inadequate income drives them deeper into poverty.
As for possible religious objections, Presidential Assistant Patrick Moynihan underlined that the campaign will be designed not to force birth control information on anyone.
The message is explicit with respect to any of these matters. Any of the programs and the activities that follow from these programs will absolutely respect the right and freedom of conscience of any individual with respect to any matters so private, personal, and ultimately ideological, ultimately even religious, that is involved here. The United States government wishes to provide people, make it possible for people freely to choose how they shall conduct themselves in these matters, and no sense, in no way, proposes to coerce, even to influence, but simply to make available to all what is now available to most.
The President's message called the problem of worldwide population explosion one of the most serious challenges to human destiny in the last third of this century. Dan Rather, CBS News, the White House.
The Black Panthers open their national convention in Oakland tonight without one of their most prominent members. Eldridge Cleaver, Panther Minister of Information, best-selling author, and California parole violator, is in Algiers. CBS newsman Adam Raphael was at a news conference there yesterday when Cleaver spoke about his life as a fugitive.
I don't consider myself to be an exile. I'm just making a little maneuver so that I can escape from the hands of the people who were trying to put me into prison. I consider the United States my home. San Francisco Bay Area specifically is the place that I want to be. I'm already getting a little homesick. I want to return there. Efforts are being made to have me returned by the FBI. I don't want to go back that way and be incarcerated without a trial. Now, if we cannot deal with it that way, and if J. Edgar Hoover is not able to get me back his way, then it's quite possible that I will return there the same way that I left, without them knowing how, when, or where, and I'll just pop up somewhere to say hello to Governor Reagan or Mayor Alioto, you know. I've traveled through about 8 countries. I won't say which ones, but they've all been former colonized areas, and it's one thing to sit in the United States and talk about imperialism and colonialism and the effect that has on other people, but it's another thing if when you're there and see it for yourself. So that I know that there's an increasing reluctance in the United States to have other people around the world dying for us. We feel that it's now time for us to do the dying that is a result of the system in the United States, and to also do the killing that will be required to bring that situation to an end.
In Charleston, South Carolina today, county hospital workers and officials settled a 111-day strike, which had become as much a civil rights fight as a labor dispute. The strike began over the issue of union recognition and was prolonged by the hospital's refusal to fire replacement workers to give jobs back to the strikers. Under the settlement, the replacements will still not be fired, but 42 strikers immediately will be offered jobs, and the hospital promises to find places for the remaining 27 within 3 months.
You're pinching.
Breathe in. This zipper sure doesn't close like it used to.
Any suggestions?
Of course. The Playtex Living Long Line Bra. The stretch panels smooth out midriff bulge comfortably. Even after 50 machine washings, the Playtex Long Line Bra stretches this way, that way, still stretches like new. So make all your dresses fit better, look better, with a Playtex Living Long Line Bra.
The tantalizing fragrance of Rapid Shave smells so good, you won't want to shave it off.
Smells so good, you won't want to shave it off. Smells so good, you won't want to shave it off. Smells so good.
Rapid Shave in juicy lime, tingling menthol mint, and the fresh wake-up fragrance of regular.
Smells so good, you won't want to shave it off.
The Organization of American States today failed again to end the war between Honduras and El Salvador. Another ceasefire was broken almost as soon as it was agreed to, and fighting resumed on several fronts. However, the OAS got both sides to agree to another ceasefire taking effect tonight. Bringing an end to this Central American war has not been easy. CBS News correspondent Robert Shackney explains from an area near the border in occupied Honduras.
This is why it's so hard to end that border war in Central America. Salvadorian soldiers who don't want to give up that tiny part of Honduras they've conquered. Thursday, the Salvadorians were still moving north into Honduras, still talking of the righteousness of their cause.
Well, we're filled with a big heart to fight, until we die, but we want to all the world know that we're fighting because they hurt our people, The Honduran people hurt our people, They kick our people out of his country,
This is the kind of war where soldiers ride into combat in commandeered civilian buses. The Salvadorians are armed largely with weapons that date back 20 years or more. There's a makeshift quality to their military effort. How much fighting this army has done, no outsider really knows. We weren't allowed to go up to the forward positions. But there are few signs of heavy combat. Casualties have been light. Apparently, the Honduran army isn't very different either. It didn't do much fighting to hold this border territory. This may not look like much to you, but this is the biggest prize of the conflict, the captured border town of Nueva Ocotepeque. 25,000 Hondurans used to live here. Now there are none. They fled in fear of what might happen. An isolated bomb crater, a single damaged house in a border village, a burned-out customs station, the only evidence of war that had passed through here 2 days earlier. Still, this small wedge of occupied territory is a big prize for tiny, overcrowded El Salvador, a country that needs more land, and whose people look across a frontier at underpopulated, underdeveloped Honduras. Ending the shooting may be possible. Getting the Salvadorian army to withdraw is something else indeed. Robert Shackney, CBS News, in occupied Honduras.
General Earl Wheeler, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, flew to the war zone north of Saigon today for meetings with U.S. commanders in the field. Wheeler is trying to determine if the fighting ability of South Vietnamese forces is good enough to allow more Americans to withdraw, and whether the lull in combat represents a genuine de-escalation on the part of the enemy.
What a way to start your mornings. With the sound of bronchial congestion and bronchial asthma. You need Broncaid tablets to relieve coughing and wheezing, help raise phlegm, clear bronchial passages. And for sudden attacks of bronchial asthma, try Broncaid Mist. Relief starts almost instantly. Clogged air passages open fast. You breathe freely again. That's a relief.
When you have acid indigestion, every second counts. So count on instant-acting Phillips tablets. Phillips tablets go to work in seconds. With one of the fastest stomach settlers ever discovered, each small Phillips tablet neutralizes more excess stomach acid than the leading antacid tablet that comes in a roll. So for fast relief from acid-upset stomach, when every second counts, count on instant-acting Phillips tablets.
In the Senate today, Democratic leaders firmly refused to act on President Nixon's income tax surcharge extension without accompanying tax reform. Roger Mudd reports.
Senate Democratic leader Mike Mansfield today warned the Nixon administration it will run the risk of a filibuster if it tries to pass the surtax bill before tax reform is ready for action. In a brief but spirited and partisan debate, Republican leader Everett Dirksen promptly accused Mansfield of playing with the destiny of 202 million people. And the Republican whip, Hugh Scott of Pennsylvania, his arms scribing oratorical circles, told the Senate the Democrats will be to blame for this dreadful spiral of inflation if the surtax is not passed. Scott said if there is no action by the August 13th recess, he will hit the streets blaming the Democrats.
I am going by helicopter into 18 counties of my state in August after recess, and I'm going into the cities, and I'm going to run into people everywhere who will say, why don't we get some relief in taxes? Why don't we get some relief in inflation and in the cost of living? I'm going to say to them, you'll have to blame the people who wouldn't let the rest of us have a tax bill which is designed to combat inflation in the first place, to take off people at the poverty level in the second place, and to contain certain tax reforms in the third place. And I'm going to tell them who's responsible for it.
In reply, Mansfield accused Scott of making political threats and of trying to saddle the Democrats with the GOP's fiscal problems. The tax bill all but obscured today's ABM debate, which Republican Senator Hansen of Wyoming finally got started in an almost empty chamber. Senator Symington today withdrew his request for another secret session in apparent irritation that the first one did not remain secret very long. The Senate leadership does not now expect the first vote on ABM until July 29th or 30th. Roger Mudd, CBS News, Washington.
Dr. John Knowles, who was passed over for the government's top health job, urged Congress today to scrap the Medicaid program and replace it with an even broader program of health care for all Americans. Testifying at a Senate hearing, the Boston physician proposed establishment of a system of neighborhood health centers and group practice of medicine. He rejected criticisms that this would be communistic or socialistic and said it would not jeopardize doctors. Meantime, Dr. Roger Eggerberg took the oath of office today for the job that Knowles was to have had, Assistant Secretary for Health and Scientific Affairs. The Wall Street Journal reported today that a deadly nerve gas had been accidentally released at a U.S. base on Okinawa last week, causing more than 20 people to be hospitalized. Nerve gas and Okinawa are two sensitive subjects in Washington, and the Pentagon was quick to react. Robert Pierpoint reports.
Deeply concerned over the international implications of that Okinawa accident, the Pentagon today issued a very carefully prepared statement. Spokesman Jerry Friedheim did not even use the words nerve gas.
As a result of a mishap on Okinawa, which occurred on July 8th, while they were working on a maintenance operation, 23 U.S. military personnel and 1 U.S. civilian employee were placed under medical observation. All were released and returned to full duty within about 6 hours. No other persons were involved.
That statement doesn't say there was any nerve gas involved. Can you clarify whether there was or not?
That's the extent of the statement that we can make.
The administration recently ordered a review of chemical warfare policy, but now that may not be enough to mollify Congress.
What surprises me is that we're spending some $350 million a year on the research and development and apparently deployment and testing of chemical and biological warfare weapons without extensive debate about the moral question involved and without extensive debate about the policy questions involved.
This raises a new issue in this whole chemical and biological warfare question, along with the testing in the United States, the transportation in the United States, the question of ratification of treaties and so forth. And that major question is, what is our policy on the deployment of these deadly nerve gases abroad? Now, I know that we have shipped nerve gas to Germany. I've had reports that it has been shipped to other allied nations. And I think this is a question that deserves the highest level review by the White House, and I would like to see the President clarify this whole question.
But at the White House, a spokesman declined comment, passing the buck back to the Defense Department. So it would appear that officials here, already beset by the war in Vietnam, the ABM controversy, and charges of overspending, now have yet another public problem to deal with. Robert Pierpoint, CBS News, at the Pentagon.
When correspondent Pierpoint was leaving the Pentagon after covering that nerve gas story, he came upon a curious scene. Here's his report.
It happened at rush hour, just half a mile from the Pentagon. Hundreds of secret military documents scattered across the landscape, and several frantic military intelligence agents scrambling to retrieve them. An embarrassed spokesman for the Pentagon said they were not quite sure how the documents, most of them marked secret, got onto the highway and into the bushes. But presumably they were dropped by a truck that was on its way to an incinerator somewhere to burn them. Most of the papers were from 7 to 10 years old, and one this reporter picked up, to return to the Pentagon, of course, was very appropriate. It outlined the need for more efficiency in the control of classified documents. Robert Pierpoint, CBS News, Washington.
Massive power failures have apparently been narrowly averted in large areas of the east today as a 4-day heat wave pushed electrical power use to near capacity. Power companies in the New York, Philadelphia, and Washington urban complex warned during the day that the situation was critical and urged that air conditioners and fans be turned off. Some utility companies said that equipment failure added to the emergency. The Weather Bureau is predicting a break in the heat wave tonight, with temperatures dropping into the 70s. A mild rally ended today as prices on the New York Stock Exchange resumed their decline. On a volume of 8,590,000 shares, the New York Exchange Index lost 33 cents. The American Exchange Index declined 11 cents. Thor Heyerdahl and his crew went back aboard their listing reed boat Ra today, rigged an emergency sail, and headed toward Barbados, about 625 miles away. The Norwegian explorer decided to continue the attempt to cross the Atlantic from Africa, but from now on he and his men will spend nights aboard an escort vessel. Heyerdahl's original goal was Central America, but now the voyage will end when they reach Barbados.
You got up before the sun, traveled all day long, but nothing can go wrong, 'cause you're going home, going home. But will it be the same as you remember in the shadows of your mind?
Wherever you go, that's Marlboro country.
You're bound to end up home, going home.
Come to Marlboro country.
This fine razor isn't made by Persona. It's made by a competitor. But to get the best shave with it, use the new electro-coated Persona blade. Maybe someday we'll make the best razor. But for now, we'll settle for the best blade, the electro-coated Persona.
There was another and perhaps final installment in the Joe Namath Bachelors 3 saga today as the New York Jets star quarterback agreed to sell his interest in the New York bar and return to the playing field. Pro Football Commissioner Pete Rozelle made the announcement at his New York office, and then Namath explained why he had agreed to sell the bar.
There still is one point I'd like to stress, and I think all the law enforcement bodies, Mr. Rozelle, will agree with this. Nothing is wrong with Bachelors 3, but because of what some of the people have written and some of the things that have been said in the past, because of the public reading these things and believing it, has caused so much trouble for football, for me, that we feel that we should just divest ourselves of the restaurant this time, have nothing to do with it, and play football. Even though everything that's been said about myself having dice games, etc., the magazines writing what they have, and newspapers writing about undesirable people, hasn't been proven, and Bachelors 3 has never done anything wrong. I still want to play football, and we are back in football after the agreement.
That's the news. This is Harry Reisner. Good night.